just joined, you'll have missed our 10 minutes of prattling on, but welcome to our hands-on adoption hug this week. So it's going to be all about using HubSpot tools and features to the absolute max. So before we get stuck in, let me introduce myself. I'm Bridget Pine, so I'm a marketing manager here at BabelQuest and the CRM adoption hug organizer. So I'm basically here to keep Chris speaking within the time limit and to ask him questions as we go through. So do use the Q&A and the chat and ask your questions, and we'll definitely try and address everything today. So I've got Chris with me here today. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself to those that might not have met you before?
Yeah, probably nobody has met me before, but anyway, I'm Chris Grant. I'm a consultant at BabelQuest. I implement new HubSpot portals and fix broken ones, which is actually a lot of fun. If you ever want to see more of me, I'm in a few places around the HubSpot Academy as well, reporting certification and frictionless sales. So if you're not horrified by an hour of listening to me talk and you want to hear more, then do that, and do connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to chat.
Perfect. And a little bit of boring housekeeping. So I mentioned already, pop your questions in the chat. I'm recording, so I will share this as well. It takes a little time to buffer afterwards. So it will likely be first thing tomorrow that you get the recording through. And then any resources that we mentioned throughout, I will also include in the email. So with that, let's dive in. Chris, take us away.
Okay, so we're here to talk about adoption, and Bridget has asked me to kind of be a little bit more practical. So what I've tried to do is build out a sequence of areas that we can talk about. We're gonna kind of dot around, dive into different bits of HubSpot and how we can potentially use the different hubs to track and drive adoption. I think probably the most important thing to think about up front is that adoption is the biggest and most important thing that we're going to face when we're implementing a new CRM. And I think for those of you that have got existing portals where you're finding that people aren't using it as much, it's that concept of ongoing utilization. So adoption is great, but adoption utilization is essentially that sort of North Star. We want people to use the CRM, and we want them to keep using the CRM. Does it, comments in the chat, I'd be interested to see what sort of obstacles you come up against as well, and maybe we can kind of address some of those as we go through the session. But I think the biggest couple of things are just that sort of initial considerations, are just the fact that you launch a CRM, and typically I've been through it at lots of companies. I spent time as a salesperson for about 20 years, and I managed to avoid using CRMs quite effectively, mainly because they're badly implemented, and you get given this new thing, told to use it, and after a couple of weeks you kind of get bored because you don't hear anything else about it. So I think the number one thing before we go into the technical aspect is just trying to keep that energy up, and just trying to make sure that people are constantly being reminded, and not necessarily in that sort of nagging way, but things like marketing comms, the CRM's been updated, who's doing it, and just that concept of building that community, creating champions, just keeping the energy up. It's basically trying to form a habit. And if you read anything, if any of you are trying to start running or lose weight or eat different food or whatever it happens to be, think of your CRM in exactly the same way. We get excited, we do the thing, whatever it is, we go for a run for 3 days, and then we get a bit tired, and it's much easier to just turn the telly on. So thinking about it that way kind of makes it quite an easy thing to consider. What are we going to do to keep ourselves going running? And it's the same with your CRM system. So on that basis, the first thing that I want to kind of dig into and actually talk about is how we can potentially use some of the aspects of Service Hub to help drive our ongoing utilization. Now I'm going to share my screen, share a window. Okay, that's horrifying. But let's just go over here.
Too many Bridgets there.
Okay, too many Bridgets. Let's try again. better stop sharing. But actually, the first thing we're going to look at, can you now see there we go. It looks like, Bridget, you can confirm. Can we see a HubSpot user monthly survey?
We can indeed.
We can. So this is the first thing. If you've got Service Hub, this stuff is baked in. A lot of people will be doing NPS and all of that sort of thing, surveying their customers, their lapsed customers, their success team will be leading this. But actually, you've got all the functionality built in here that you need to actually get people to give you feedback about the CRM. And just in the chat, I'd be interested to know how many people are actually surveying their users on a regular basis. We've got tumbleweed there.
Does that mean nobody, potentially, or not that many of us? Not me. That's very honest, actually.
No, I think that's great, but it's definitely something that we can do because it serves a number of purposes. First, it lets them know that we're not just implementing something and keeping it just the same. We're actually interested in people's views. We want to get feedback. So a nice, simple survey. And in this case, what I've done is I've just said, please fill in the survey. How do you find it working with contacts? And why did you give the rating above? How do you find managing your pipeline? Why did you give it the rating you did? You could add additional questions. So things like, what really causes you problems? How can we take away some of the pain? Where is the admin burden at its heaviest when you're using the system? And with all of this sort of thing, we can go and we can show this stuff to the users. But what we can also then do is actually look at the results. And we've got a feedback survey. I'm now going to try and change the screen I'm sharing. Go. And you can see we've got our HubSpot user monthly survey. We can actually start to track our responses, so we can see. Actually, Chris Grant has filled it in a lot. Worth pointing out, this is our test portal, and I've set all this up to demo. But we can track how people feel. We can see the sort of responses we're getting. It works, takes away the admin. We can see the positive. We can see the negative. And as we do this, we're going to be building up a picture of how people feel about the system. And there's going to be themes. You're going to have the moaners who are just going to moan all the time. We're never going to get it right for them. But seeing what those sort of peripheral people think is really important. And the great thing about doing this sort of thing is that we can put it on a dashboard, we can report on it, we can show it to the team, and we can use it to actually provide feedback to them. So we can then say, in the last survey that we did, you said the sidebars were too complicated and you couldn't find the properties you need. So what we've done is we've implemented conditional team-based sidebars, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. But really just very simple. It's going to take you 2 or 3 minutes to put a survey together, send it out to your team, and find out how they actually feel about the CRM. It might be a bit scary because you might be expecting horrifying responses, but it's a journey, and you've almost got to start with that first step. So show them that you care, show them that you're interested, get them using a HubSpot tool to give you feedback about HubSpot, and use Service Hub if you've got it to be able to understand how your users are feeling. I'm going to check whether we've had any questions on that front.
I actually have a question for you, Chris. So I love this idea, and I think as a marketer, we obviously use surveys quite a lot to ask our customers questions, but never really internally. So how often would you propose, and I guess this depends on where you are in the implementation of a CRM, but how often would you schedule these for?
I mean, I'd go, it's going to depend, but it's going to be monthly or quarterly. I think I think you could do it annually, but realistically, you're not going to see any delta there. You're going to just see 2023, 2024, 2025. But what we actually want to be able to see is is there a change? Are we seeing a downward trend in the ratings that people are giving us? Because that's a leading indicator that, downward trend for a couple of months, that's probably something that we need to address, and we can get ahead of it before we get the next downward trend.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is we can set this survey up and automate it. So it's really just a case setting it up, automating it, and reviewing the results. So I think ideally monthly, if we really want to cement it. But if that sounds terrifying, then let's do it quarterly.
That makes sense. Thank you. I don't think there's any other questions at the moment, so we can move on.
Okay, I'm actually going to stay on the same screen. I've got all these sort of opened up, ready for me. But I think the other big thing is that certainly something that I like to do here is to have a HubSpot issues pipeline. So the ability for people to raise a ticket when they get something wrong. So instead of stomping around to your room, banging on the door and saying it doesn't work, let's actually give them a form that they can fill in, and let's get them to raise tickets for issues that they have. Now, one of the things here is that if we're going to be doing it this way, we need to be able to respond to the tickets, and we need to show that we're responding. It's all very well having tickets and tracking them, but if they're not getting picked up, then they will tend to lose their excitement, and they won't keep using the system.
SLAs, very important, not just for customers, but internally, is what you're saying.
Yeah, very much so. I think you've got to show that you're not just going through the motions. So, in this case, we've got a nice simple ticket pipeline. We've got a form, and let's say this form could be on our employee website. Problem with HubSpot, raise a ticket, and it doesn't have to be an overly complicated ticket. In this case, we've just got a status, and we've got a ticket name, and we're assigning that ticket to somebody. We could have different types of tickets as well. So in this case, this could be a change request. So it could be somebody actually making a suggestion. So again, if you're going to use tickets for your HubSpot users internally, don't just make it negative, make it positive. Give them the opportunity to suggest new things and show that you're listening. And again, this is going to give you a warning about problems that are coming. If you're getting 2 or 3 tickets over the course of a month about exactly the same area, then it probably means it's something that needs to be addressed. And again, it's a leading indicator potentially that there may be trouble ahead. And a lot of the whole adoption utilization is about being able to read the warning signs and see those leading indicators that potentially a problem is coming. So that's a big tip there, is just have that ticket pipeline.
I really like this, and I think you've mentioned this before on previous hugs where we've chatted about adoption, is that sometimes people create their CRM without necessarily talking to the people that are actually going to be using it. So having this change request form and places where it feels like these people are then going to be heard is a good way to retrospectively, if you haven't maybe taken them into consideration now.
And making them feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
People feel heard, they're much more likely to do something that you want them to do. A lot of this is the softer side, but what we're doing here is using the tools to let people express themselves. And because it's consistent and we're keeping doing it, then there's always that impetus. It's almost that sort of, the Coca-Cola effect, where you're likely to see or hear Coca-Cola 7 times a day, but not actually realize you have. So if your teams internally are hearing HubSpot or the CRM on a regular basis, it's that subtle reminder that they need to be logging their deals, creating contacts, doing whatever it is you want them to do.
Okay, I think no questions so far for the Service Hub tools. Where would you like to go next, Sales Hub or dashboards?
I think let's talk a little bit about dashboards, mainly because that's the order that I've written it down on my my preparation sheet. And we've done this. We have done this in detail. So there is, if we don't go into this in enough detail for you, then get in touch, and we've got a recording of a Beyond the Hub where we talked about this concept, which I really like, of the adoption dashboard. So let's go into our dashboard. How does everyone feel about the new navigation as well? So, rather fun.
Can't get used to it just yet, personally. I didn't adopt it right at the start, and now it's changed, and I'm struggling a little bit. Things have moved.
I feel it. For me, it's kind of like going on holiday and driving a car on the other side of the road.
Yes, we'll get used to it. We'll get used to it.
But we'll go through this reasonably quickly. But as I say, if any of you are curious, we can send you a full recording and go into this in depth, and we actually build some of the reports. But we've talked about monitoring what people think and how they feel. But there's a whole lot of other metrics that we can look into, and putting them on a dashboard is a really nice, powerful way of being able to see what's going on. And it's almost a case of just using all the various different bits of HubSpot to pull this sort of thing together. The fact that we can have words, we can have text sections on our dashboards is nice. We can explain what people are actually seeing. But I've broken this up into various sections, the first one being activity metrics. Now, obviously, if people aren't using the CRM, they're not logging their activities, and we're not going to be seeing activity metrics. So it's a good indicator of any potential issues. And these are all fairly simple single object reports. But here, for example, we're looking at how many deals are being created this month. We might want to look at deal creation over time, again, so that we can see that line or that graph. Are we seeing something going down? Other areas, deals created later than the first stage of the pipeline is typically, it's a signpost that people are putting their deals in at the last minute because they have to, rather than because they want to track their deal through a process. Activities that people are doing, again, put those on a dashboard. Let's see what people are up to. You can see here that we've got one user who's using the system very well, and everybody else, rubbish. Test portal again. Tasks as well. That's another nice metric. Are people actually using tasks? User logins. Here what we've actually done, and we're going to talk about this in more detail in the next section, but we've actually embedded the user table directly into a dashboard, and we're sort of saying here, this section lets you see who's logging in each day. We can calculate daily active users, monthly active users, and I think that's something that that is coming at the back end of HubSpot as well, as they develop out the user object. But we can see all of those key facts, and we can see, are we seeing a drop off in logins? We're going to go into that in a bit more depth in a later section, so I'm going to kind of skip over that. But here, for example, I've also created a section on training records. I think people that are keen to learn about a particular tool are going to be using it. They're going to be active, they're going to be interested, and they're going to be engaged. So let's see what they're up to in the HubSpot Academy, for example. Let's see what our team are up to. Are they doing certifications? What certifications are they doing? Are they engaging with areas that are not their specific area, which again is a nice indication that they're excited. Excuse me,
I think what you've
dusty old room this.
It is. I like what you said there about it's not just flagging when there's a problem as well, like a red flag or something to watch out for. It's especially with those tasks and activities. Is there somebody who's doing loads of activity? Well, they could be a champion. They could be somebody that you can use internally for positivity and to bring the team up.
I think, and a lot of the time when you talk about this concept of utilization, people focus on the negatives. The sales team won't fill it in, or whatever it happens to be. But we also need to be looking for positives that we can shout about. Whether there's a monthly email update saying this is our HubSpot Power User of the Month. It's all good stuff. So look for those positives. I've also created here in this case, I've got an enterprise portal, so I've built a custom object to just track my HubSpot users. I believe this is something that HubSpot are going to supersede eventually, but all I want to be able to do is just track my team, who's done which of the internal HubSpot trainings that we've provided. Do we have any champions? And if we do, then it's worth knowing who they are. Do we have people that are able to train others? Can somebody who's stuck quickly look at this table and go and find somebody to get them unstuck? Because again, if a user gets stuck and nobody helps them and they can't get unstuck, then they're going to create a spreadsheet or do something that you don't want them to do. They're going to circumvent the process that you want them to follow. So getting people unstuck quickly is important. So again, we're just tracking their training record. Very simple properties. Another one that if you've followed any of the videos I tend to make, data health is a big bugbear for most people, I think. A lot of the time we'll go into a HubSpot portal and we'll find an appalling mess. HubSpot's data tools are getting better and better. If you've got Ops Hub, you can actually set up workflows that fix a lot of these problems. But picking out the key data points that might show usage is dwindling or that people are not quite doing what we want them to do. And in this case, these are very simple, simple KPI-based reports. We use filters to create them. So in this case, I'm looking for my deals with a close date in the past, and I've got hundreds and hundreds of them, which implies that we probably have an adoption or an utilization problem because the sales team aren't updating their dates. So for each of you, just sort of thinking about what are the key data points that might indicate that there's a bit of a problem. Are we doing a lot of email marketing and we don't have subscription types set up for people? Are we struggling with people that have opted in? Are we GDPR compliant? So almost picking out those 5 or 6 key data points that your company would consider to be really important in terms of if there's missing data, that's bad. And I suppose we'll just briefly dip into these reports because they are nice and easy to build. So you'll see if I go into the report builder, all this is, as I said, is a KPI report, and we've just broken down deal owner by count of deals, so we can see all the people, all their deals, and the filter is just saying in the sales pipeline, and we don't have a next activity date. If we wanted to change that report to show a close date in the past, then we just grab a different filter. Close date filter in there, and let's say it's. And because we've broken this report down by user, we can see who the biggest offenders are that haven't been updating their close dates. And it turns out it's me. So it's bad. But going back to our dashboard, I think for all of you, those are nice and simple to build, but they do show you a great deal about where there might be data hole, might be problems coming. Now, we talked about this. We looked at using the Survey Hub. If we're surveying the customers, if we're surveying our internal users, let's actually on a dashboard. So we've got our user feedback, and we can see the comments people are making. And again, that could be something we use in internal marketing. It could be something we use on our employee website. We just want to be showing people that other people are happy using the system. And again, as you see more and more people saying positive things, then you start to see that sort of positive groundswell of opinion, and the naysayers become a minority. So do the survey, put it on a dashboard. Likewise with your support tickets, we can embed parts of HubSpot into HubSpot. So I've just embedded this pipeline. We can quickly look and see how many new tickets have we got. Is there a potential problem? If you really want to go deep, we can look at the security logs. So we can put this on and we can see, are people doing odd things? Have they disabled email logging, disabled email tracking? Are they exporting? Export is really good sign that there's probably a problem. It means you're either getting that data out to do something nefarious with it, or you're getting that data out because you can't work with it in HubSpot itself. So I think the key there is just we're collecting all this information. Let's put it on a dashboard, and let's build a dashboard that we, as the HubSpot admin, can actually look at and say, right, I've looked through the details. Adoption or utilization is trending up. There's nothing to worry about. We've got some good feedback, or it's trending down, and we know why. It's because people are really unhappy about X, Y, or Z. And I think that's really it on the dashboards front. I wonder, do we have anyone want to add a question in the chat, or does that all make sense? Is that kind of working for everybody in terms of something you think you could do with your own HubSpot portal?
No questions just yet, which I'm going to take as a positive. It means that you've been very thorough. So I think what would be really good is to dive into that user tables that you've mentioned as well.
So let's have a look at that. And to get to our user table, we're going to use settings, and we're going to go to users and teams. Now, just slightly frustratingly, if you've got lots of users, you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom before you can move across. But the user table actually tells us lots of useful stuff. So we can see, I've actually got this set up because we can edit the columns and decide the key things we want to see. We can see things like last active, who's actually been in the system, and we can see who's been accessing it. We can see people whose calendars are connected, and again, there are certain people who need to have their calendars connected because that's adding data about their meetings to HubSpot. And if we can see that they're disconnected, then let's do something about it. Let's talk to them, ask them why. If we scroll across again, you can see the email status. So, do they have their email synced with the HubSpot portal? And that gives you information that you can work with. If you see that somebody's disabled their email sync, then let's ask them why. Typically, the reason that people will not want to have their emails logged is they're worried because they use their work email for other things. So they might be buying things, they might be booking appointments. And if that's the case, then we can intervene at that point and say, did you know you can build a never log list? So we can actually build a list of email addresses that will never, ever be logged to the CRM. So if we are secretly using our work email for homing from work, then that's not going to get logged, and we're not going to have our conversations with our partners set up in the system. What else is useful on here? Your permission sets, that goes without saying, worth monitoring. In this case, we've got it's a test portal, but everybody's a super admin. If you're working in a HubSpot portal where everybody's a super admin, then you need to work out why and try and address that as soon as possible.
Especially with the new seats pricing, you don't want to be paying for people to be in different seats that don't need it, I suppose.
Absolutely not. And I think I don't know whether we've got this later on the agenda, but again, it's something that's definitely worth digging into is that permissioning. And I think I would call it ego-based permissioning, where just because somebody's the managing director, they demand to be a super admin, but they're literally going to look at the HubSpot portal once a week, or they're going to get a report sent to them. And the worst is typically, and I say this from experience because I was one, but the worst is typically the sales director, because they're short of time, they have targets to hit, and if they see a shortcut and have super admin, then they're going to go in and tinker. And I'm very
Great.
much poacher turned gamekeeper there. Create a field, build a workflow, just enough knowledge to really cause problems. So watch out for that that permissioning. And I think at this point, it's probably then worth actually dipping into the typical group of users adoption problem. I'd be quite interested to see in the chats. I think we got sort of somebody head of marketing. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but which group of users would any of you typically find are the least likely to adopt and use a CRM system?
We reject. I love that.
Yep, every time.
Our sales,
but I think
sales admin uses, but we reject. For those that couldn't see that, I love that.
Yeah, and I think that's the one that typically our sales users are the ones that tend salespeople over the age of 50. Yep, very much so. I think, yes, I mean, it is actually nice that we do start to see that younger salespeople coming into the system do tend to they do tend to use systems a lot better. Whereas I think once you get, if you grow up in sales, you're typically worried about what's going to happen with the data you put in, with people monitoring you. Sales and accounts no longer allowed to make any changes outside of deal management. Brilliant. So I think there's a two-pronged approach to this. We can police them and we can make sure that their permissions give them only what they need to do their job. But I think also the other thing is that we can look into how can we make the system better for them? How can we actually pick them up and carry them on our shoulders and give them things that make their lives easier? And there's a few things that we can think about. The first, and I'm going to paste this in, is just making sure that our records are actually customized so that they're nice for a sales user to use. There's various areas we can customize. So we can customize the left sidebar. Everybody's doing that. But I can go into my left sidebar and here's my default view. And look at this, there's just loads and loads and loads of properties that if a salesperson goes in, they're going to struggle to find exactly what they need. So let's actually look at what the salesperson needs, the properties they need to fill in, or that they need to know to do their job. And let's cut this down. They don't need to see a record ID. And it could be that we want to create conditional sections for them, for example. So we could say, I want to add a section, important sales properties. So let's put them all together. And let's say we'll make this conditional on, let's say, life cycle stage. It's a deal, so we're not cracking that. Let's go deal stage. So it could be conditional on deal stage, and we might want to give them a particular selection of properties that we want them to fill in at the negotiation stage. And we can go through and we can add our particular properties. And this way, they don't have all that clutter. And when the deal moves to the particular stage where you want to collect that data, then we can collect that data. So declutter for your sales team. The other one that people tend to miss is the right sidebar, which is typically an absolute monstrosity in the majority of HubSpot portals because nobody knew you could customize it, and then nobody does. But if I click on customize my right sidebar, you can see I've got all the various cards that are available. But it could be that, we don't associate deals with deals, so let's take that one off. We might not want to add links. We might not want line items if we don't use them. We may not be using quotes. Playbooks are useful for salespeople, so let's put them up at the top. And then we can save that as well. And suddenly they've got a much less cluttered view. And the final thing is that we can actually make it really useful for them. So The middle column, if we go to the middle column of our HubSpot record, and I don't know how many of you have ever played around with this, but you have your activity tab and your activity stream. We can see what people are up to, but we've also got this overview, and actually add lots and lots of things to the overview. So it might be that they want to see recent activities. They might want to see a table of all the contacts. They might want to see any of these sort of areas. And we can also add cards. So you can see the cards that are chosen here. Now, I don't know if anybody was aware of this, but we can also add reports. So you'll see here I've got report cards which I've created. And we can do that. You can create cards here. So we can create an association table, a label list. But if you want to add a report to an object, you can only add single object reports at the moment. And if you're going to build a report card, you have to build it first in the single object report builder without any filters. It will then appear filtered to your specific record that you're looking at. But think through those cards and how you can actually make that CRM actually tailored so that it's almost a really nice experience for sales. And you do see this sort of feedback. We implement a lot of HubSpot portals, and we talk to sales before, during, and after the process of implementation. And a lot of the time you do get those comments of, oh, I've got a complete view of the customer. I think 360 view of the customer. I don't need to go anywhere else. So my life's easier. Thank you. So that's the sort of thing to think about. So customization and making it relevant to them is really important.
We have a couple of questions, Chris, if I can interject whilst we're still on the customization side of things. So Eddie said, what thought process would you use when creating new property groups and the visible views? Are property groups more macro and views more micro?
I think, so the way that I look at property groups is I think they're useful for building things out. It's almost like, yeah, let's say you might have a property group favorites, and have favorite ice cream, favorite cheese, favorite red wine, favorite beer. You'd put all of those under that property group of favorites. So it's thinking about how can we make it easy to find. It is quite difficult to think about because I always think about grouping things together in the way that if I go to the supermarket and I'm trying to work out where a particular thing will be, I have to kind of think myself into the head of the person that's laid out the supermarket. And, does this cat, I was looking for matzo crackers the other day and I had to work out, well, are they crackers for cheese? I went there, no. Oh, okay, what would they count as? Are they free from? No, and I eventually found them in World Foods. So I think the thought process is just trying to keep it as simple as possible and trying to solve for the users. And I think, yes, views very much are more micro, where we're creating a view for a particular person. And if we get really granular, we're creating a specific view for a person at a particular stage in our process.
Perfect. A couple more questions. So are there some Instagram and LinkedIn integrations for sales data to sync in that you can recommend?
So the new LinkedIn Sales Navigator integration, which I think is coming or has arrived
at the end of April, I think it's coming out.
Is pretty exciting, but you do need to have the all singing, all dancing version of LinkedIn, but it is really good. So I'd recommend looking at that, especially if your sales teams do use that sort of thing.
And then can we disable workflow activities from the activities so unrelated people can't see them on their activity timeline? I would love this, but I don't think it's possible, is it?
I mean, weirdly, the typical thing you hear from salespeople is, why do I have to see that? So when I'm training people, tend to do, we can't see them appearing. But let's say we're going to go into one of these records. When we're training people, one of the first things I do is talk through this and the fact that we don't need to see all of that and it makes it cluttered. So let's deselect. And what do I actually want? I want communications and I want team activity from a sales perspective. And the rest I don't really want. So again, it's just helping them and showing them how to do this. And this is the sort of thing you can create as a 20-second video, send to your sales team, and they'll thank you for it. So just simplify. And again, put the important data they need to see into that middle column. But yeah, just getting them to use filters and explaining how that can make things easier for them is really, really important. And I think the other thing on that front that I would say is while we're here, what you can do is create saved filtered views for them, which again gets people more engaged because they don't come in and see 15,000, 16,000 records. What we can do is create a filtered view, and let's say contact owner is only me, and whenever I'm doing this live, it always picks something that has no data in it. Say, let's go with IP country. It's UK. Yep. Seriously, years, and this sort of thing doesn't work. But let's say we've chosen something that does work. Once we've created built out those filters, we can actually save that view. And we do that. You'll see we can't save initially because it'll tell us it's read only. But if we clone it, and we can call it my special view. I've obviously called it that before. I'm going to go 1, and I'm going to confirm. So I've now got a saved filtered view. And again, we can show the users that these all exist. So once we've created a saved filtered view, it's here forever. And I can add my hot leads. I can add my best customers, get rid of my special view. But looking from a sales perspective now, I can just focus on the bits that I really want to see as opposed to all the other stuff. So really worth doing, either educating your sales team, showing them how to do it, or just building them out for them. Sometimes with some groups of users, you do have to just almost lead them gently by the lead. But yeah, that's another thing that's really just a good thing to do. Customize, make it sensible for them. And the final thing I think on this section is actually just talking about something which is new, which you may not have seen, which is conditional logic at property level. So you'll see we've got this section here, which has it's only been added quite recently, but we've got conditional property logic. And what we can basically do here is say, if somebody picks this option in a particular property, show them some other options. So again, it's kind of decluttering the sidebar. And it's easy to create. I'm going to create this sales feedback field. And let's say what we're asking the salespeople to do is they have an interaction with the prospect, and we want them to then tell us what happens. They're either advancing through the sales process, they're being handed back to marketing for nurture, or they're being disqualified. And let's say we're going to go hand back for nurture. We can add a dependent property. So whatever we want to add here, we might want to say, right, well, if you're handing them back to marketing for nurture, we want to know some details. So we want to know company size, and say we want to know region. And we can also make these required. So let's just make those required. So now if somebody goes to a record and they seller option in a property. We're giving them some extra fields to fill in. If I save that logic, and then we'll go back to a contact record. You'll see we've got this property again front and center because it's something we want sales to actually fill in. And you can see as soon as I click that, these extra properties come up and I have to fill them in. If they're not there, I can't save it, so that's not there. Save it, and those properties disappear. So again, really cool. Now at this point, we've kind of finished talking about Sales Hub, but we've got a question. What is the best sales process using HubSpot? Working with the prospecting tools, process their leads and process contacts through sequences using a list.
So I've just dropped a message about that question. We have actually just ran a prospecting tools training session last week. So I'll include a link to that in the email afterwards. That includes some best practice and how to use the tool properly.
But I think, on that one, it's very difficult to sort of say without knowing a little bit more. And I'm very context based, so I like to dig into things quite heavily. But it's almost a case of thinking, you've got a process. So think about what's not working with that process, or what do we think might not be working? Can we put some data in place to track whether it's working or not? Can we talk to the salespeople about what's working or not? And can we then start to use that to think about building out a new sales process? Now, I am going to whiz on because we're nearly
yes, I think running a little bit over, but that's okay.
Okay, sorry. The other thing I think we've got our users using it. We've surveyed them. We're asking them questions. They're raising problems. And I think that almost the final piece of the puzzle here is just to be constantly aware. I'm probably Bridget, so I don't know. This is my regular Monday morning. Is to go to my drop down here and go to product updates. And actually, we also do a product update webinar on a Wednesday. Is that right?
We do,
which people can sign up for if you're working with us or have worked with us. But you can also go in here and you'll see here I've got my product updates. I can see what's live. I can see what's coming. And I've got the option to opt into betas. Now, this is, again, a reason why we shouldn't have too many people being super admins, because they'll go and start turning betas on without us being able to do anything about it. But you'll see that everything that's coming in HubSpot in this section. So abandoned cart module, do we need that? Is that something that somebody's moaned about? Well, if it is, then we potentially got the option to start thinking through how we might use that. And then we can go back to say, funny you should report that particular problem. We've got an update for you and it's going to make a difference. So being at least taking the time, certainly if you're the admin in your HubSpot portal, even if it's just 10 minutes a week on a Monday morning, to just look through what's new. And I think, what did we find out today? That we've now got where it's at the new marketing section. That's marketing at home. This is beta. So lots and lots of stuff that you can find out, but you go up there and you just drop down to your product updates. I think that's it. Do you think, Bridget, do you want to cover a couple more, or are you kind of happy where we are with that?
I think
some time for some questions.
The only other thing that I think is worth mentioning is really boring documentation. It sounds really boring, but it's really important. And well, Chris, you can mention the various ways that we use it with the tools. I'll let you explain that properly.
Yeah. So well, I mean, you've got for a start, you've got the project tool, which a lot of people don't know about, but you've actually got the ability to build out projects, tick box projects in HubSpot for people, and that's quite useful. And You've also got the option to use to create documentation using the new HubSpot Scribe piece of kit, which Bridget, you would have to direct me at because I know
Yes.
it's there, but I can never
Well,
find it.
it just a plugin that you use, and you basically can create step-by-step tools, step-by-step process, and it takes screenshots with every click that you make. So I'll include the link and explanation of that one as well in the email. But there are also tools that integrate with HubSpot, like Supered, for example. Big fans of them. They really help drive that adoption along. We do have a couple of questions I'm just going to dip into now with the last few minutes that we've got. Eddie has asked, conditional logic is great. Do you know if this needs to be adhered to with workflows?
So what we're saying is if something's filled in an automated manner, would you get the conditional drop down additional fields? The answer to that is no. I don't think it would be. We'd have to mitigate against filling in the additional fields with the workflow. Otherwise, we're not really telling the machine what it needs to do. We'd probably, I think we'd probably want to look at a very specific use case to work out the best way to work around that. Because I think one of the beauties of HubSpot is there's lots of different ways to do things depending on your users, your internal process, and how you do things.
Perfect. And is it possible to create contacts and send for signature in HubSpot similar to Panda Docs? Is it good practice to use quotes for this?
Yeah, I mean, quotes, if you've got Sales Hub Pro and above, then you can use e-signature for your quotes, and they're attached to a deal. You can create a database of products or line items. They then be attached to the deal, and you can send the quote to a contact for signature, and you can then track whether they've signed it, whether they've opened it. That person you sent a quote for, you can also make them self-destruct, which is quite nice.
I don't know if that's quite how we would describe it, but that is how it works. I think that is everything. We're kind of at time now. If you do have any specific questions that you've asked and we need a bit more context for them, drop us a line on LinkedIn and we can send around.
Because I think that some of the questions I've seen are a whole session potentially, and there are some people we can bring in to think about. The only thing I would just ask Bridget, from a marketing perspective, is we're creating all this buzz and excitement about HubSpot. So I think there's a couple of things that marketing can think about, which is monthly newsletter, what's happening to the HubSpot portal, and potentially, can you form your own HubSpot user group internally?
Yeah, I love that. And we use Slack ourselves, and we do have a team on there that chats about, we post the regular updates, we share that with the team, because as you know, they release 100 a week. So keeping on top of those is really difficult. So having a dedicated team that is encouraged to do that is really, really good. I think, everybody needs to go.
Everybody needs to go. We've got one person still here. Thank you, one person. No participants. Everyone's here. Thank you, everyone. And I hope this has been interesting. Connect with us on LinkedIn and send us your other questions, and we'll see if we can put some more of these together.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody.